All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ben Cohen. I'll just hold on. Can I get rid of that window in the corner? Yeah. All right. All right. So I'm really nervous. So I'm going to be reading from my notes. So I'll be keeping my head down most of the time. Nothing personal. So this is going to be. First of all, I'd just like us to take a second to admire that GIF. I think it's great. Yeah, really soak it in. All right, so I'm going to start this presentation I named The Importance of Stepping Back, something that probably many of you would agree with. And all of you should agree with the importance of stepping back, but I'm gonna start with my personal experience and a little bit of personal background and sort of work my way up to the actual point that I'm trying to convey with this. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a disclaimer. So I graduated from an online boot camp called Thinkful, and I have not yet had the opportunity to work in the industry, like in action. I've never worked in an office a day in my life, but getting to where I am, even getting to where I am, can and has taken a great toll on me. So these are some insights that I picked up along the way after a difficult period of losing sight of myself and what's important. Some of you may relate to what I have to show you. Some may think I'm not saying anything particularly new or insightful, or some may think that what I'm saying is obvious, but these only pertain, of course, to my own personal experience. But as draining, both physically and emotionally draining as being a developer can be or is, these are important things that you should keep in mind due to the nature of the job. Prologue. So this is the background part. So this is going to be the Lifetime movie portion of the presentation. So I was born in this little slice of heaven, born and raised actually. If you can't tell, yeah, you can tell. That's the country of Israel, where everybody lives in peace and harmony. Nothing bad ever happens, and life is generally tranquil and uneventful. All right. So these are just some of the things that we've given the world. But you didn't know that, huh? Yeah, well, we invented the flash drive. But you didn't know that either, yeah. Actually, I've lived down the road from his family coffee shop was located. His mom owned a coffee shop in the city of Haifa where I lived. So I lived right down the road from where it used to be located. As you can tell, coding wasn't my first calling. Yeah, so a little bit about why I'm actually here. So I am genetically predisposed to depression and anxiety. My parents divorced when I was 5, which in hindsight sort of like fucked me up right out of the gate. Obviously didn't help things in general. My mom later married an emotionally abusive man. I was diagnosed with a chronic illness at age 13, diagnosed ADHD, social anxiety, and I am what some of you might call an introvert, whatever that means. So having lived with anxiety since my teenage years, I found an escape and later musical inspiration in the music of these sad bastards. I got my bachelor's degree in music and art history. I became an ESL teacher, that's English as a second language, while still living in Israel at the time. Got married to my high school sweetheart, then got divorced. And following a month-long bender in which I attempted and almost succeeded in drinking myself to death, I moved to Philadelphia to heal and be closer to family. And here I got into a serious relationship. I got a full-time job as a teacher in a Jewish day school, and looking for something more of a sustainable career. I enrolled in the online boot camp I told you about. Yeah, I think I mentioned it's called Thinkful. Yeah. So in this boot camp, I studied the basics of web development. You know what you'd expect: your HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React as a library, and Node on the back end. And things started going south for me. So this is like, again, still in the Lifetime movie portion of this whole thing, but I'm sort of getting to the crux of it. So things started going south for me last summer, pretty recently, when I was using all my free time to catch up on work for the boot camp in order to graduate on time. And there was also an added element of urgency, having lost my teaching job due to the stress of, school. If you've ever done any kind of, if you're a boot camp graduate and you've had to juggle that with a full-time job, I'm sure you're aware of the stress and how it permeates your almost every aspect of your personal life. So during the summer months, I only set foot outside the house to take the dog out. And the rest of the time, I sort of became a shut-in, obsessed with my projects and troubleshooting, and I think for the entire month of September, I was like a nervous wreck on account of that fucking data structures and algorithms and that shit. Yeah. So I became generally I became a man obsessed, I think is the term. Had a one-track mind this whole time. Even finding myself working on my capstone project while vacationing in Wildwood with my girlfriend. So my girlfriend, speaking of which, like the more and more she became more and more distant, the more I became disinterested in anything else other than coding, including eating, working out, socializing, all the good stuff. And I finally graduated from the boot camp last October after failing the final mock interview twice, which didn't help alleviate my already debilitating feeling of incompetence and insecurity. And not having any kind of fallback plan, I had to invest all my time and energy in job hunting, with all the cards seemingly stacked against me, having no network, recognized academic degree, or a work history conducive to finding a job in tech. And so it became sort of a vicious cycle of regression into anxiety, depression, and general feeling of malaise. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands how many of you are experiencing this feeling of malaise, but I'm sure some of you have have had this feeling before or currently are. Is all this emotional baggage helpful with coping with the inevitable stress? Sorry, that comes with being a developer, and I'm going to let David from Schitt's Creek answer that. Yeah. Sorry. Meanwhile, so my girlfriend was, I think what really brought it home was that my girlfriend was hospitalized with appendicitis. And while I was rushing down from Massachusetts to be with her while she was recuperating, I was with her in body, but my mind was elsewhere. So just about then, shit really hit the fan. She had enough of my mental absence and severe mood swings, so we split up and I became a broken wreck. My parents, actually, I fell off the wagon again. My parents bought me a plane ticket back home to Israel in order to clear my head, which thankfully it did. Being supported by old friends and ironically not doing any coding since I felt like the ground has been pulled out from under my feet. So, I mean, it's already had been pulled out from under my feet. So what's the point in like trying to polish my portfolio or whatever? So at that point, or after that point, and after returning with the benefit of a recharged battery and a clearer perspective, I started taking care of myself. And now we're getting to the actual self-help portion of the presentation. Hold on. Okay. All right. I lost my notes. All right, so this part, as you can tell, it pertains to the concept of developer depression, and the dictionary definition that I was able to find is it's a depression that developers are prone to more than the average person. It is due to the time spent in your thoughts, the hours in front of a computer without any human interaction, the imposter syndrome that tells them your code isn't good enough, the comparison to other developers in the community, and the fact that no one talks about mental health, or they rarely do. Not being talked about enough. Okay. So what to do to ward off the coding blues? Yeah, by the way, the IT crowd, it's the most clever, funniest show of our generation, excluding The Office, but I think it's like they're head to head. I mean, do you know the show? Have you seen it?
So whenever The Office is brought up, I'm just a Parks and Rec guy. I don't know. That's a
equally, yeah.
I'm with you.
About Parks and Rec or the IT crowd?
IT crowd is good, but yeah, Parks and Rec.
It's yeah. All right. So when we approach the best methods to ward off the coding blues, what I came up with is a brief summary of some points brought up by by these two guys, Jason Humphrey and Brad Traversy of Traversy Media, that if you're familiar with your YouTube tutorials, you probably come across a video of his, a very prolific tutorial instructor. Brad Traversy actually has a close experience with what I've been through, and like generally we're kindred spirits in that he also confesses to suffering from depression and anxiety, social anxiety, and all that, and he talks about it extensively in a few of his videos. I'm just gonna go over briefly some of the points. And Jason Humphrey also, if you go onto his channel, I think the first thing that comes up is a video of him talking about this topic more extensively. So the first thing that I recommend is to take frequent breaks. It sounds obvious, but not many of us do take frequent enough breaks. Many times I've found myself wanting to take a break, but right after I take care of this one little bug, and before you know it, I've been staring at the screen for an extra 2 hours after wanting to take a break. So one way to like accomplish that is perhaps like really simple things like setting a reminder on your phone to go off every couple of hours. You know, watch an episode of your favorite TV show, and go back to work. Get up and make yourself a cup of coffee. Um, you know, take a walk around the block if possible. Do push-ups. You know, just to name a few. Another thing that is really important and not talked about really often is the importance of sunlight or vitamin D. Vitamin D that you get from sunlight improves your body's absorption of calcium, and so inadequate levels of vitamin D in your body can be a cause of, among other things, lower back pain, aching bones and joints, depression at times, and muscle pain. Also, vitamin D strengthens the immune system. So if you don't get enough of it, meaning if you don't go out into the sunlight enough, you're more prone to get sick more easily. But if you do have a lot of work to do and you don't feel like you have a time to like take a walk in the park or something, then what I find that helps me is just maybe you feel the same. You can just take your laptop, walk over to your favorite coffee shop, and take the side streets, take the long route, and you know, just sit there for a couple of hours and get your work done. I mean, just being outside makes all the difference. Sit on a park bench. I don't know. I mean, work on a park bench if you still have to catch up on work. Next tip: stop using the computer at least 1 hour before you go to bed, and that's something that I really took to heart, and I think you should if you're not doing it already. I think it's very important. So this gives you a chance to relax your brain before you go to bed, so your mind is not racing with work stuff while you're trying to fall asleep, and so you get a good night's sleep. It's obviously just as important for your mental health. You know, so if you happen to be living with a partner, that can work to your advantage because you have someone, like you have an external factor that would help you sort of get in that zone, or just someone that will help you realize when you've been working too much and it's almost time to go to bed. And you know, it just also helps spend time with your loved ones, cultivate a relationship. Or you can also have them withhold sex if you fail to accomplish that on your own. And if you're single, I'm sorry. Being single sucks, I know. All right. Do any kind of physical activity, and that really means like any kind. So your body obviously needs to be stimulated, otherwise you're risking various forms of atrophy. I guess you can call that. So after working, my advice is after working 3 or 4 straight hours, like hunched in front of the computer screen, not being aware of your surroundings. So it's a good idea to hit the gym, just release all that pent up energy that's been building up while you were sitting in a stationary position for that long. Give your brain a rest and let your body work for you this once. Go out for a run, go out for a jog, mall walk if that's your thing. Or you can install a pull. Actually, this is something that I haven't implemented myself, but I will. I think in the near future. It sounds exciting. The idea sounds exciting. You can install a pull-up bar on your door frame and do a set of 10 every time you resolve a bug in your code, like a sort of a reward system that you can have with yourself while also keeping your keeping your body active, and giving your mind a rest. It also feels good, like after a set of 10, I mean, you're all pumped and, yeah. Be social. Now, this is a tricky one. I actually had to research this part in literature, I mean. So if you're like me and you're what some people might consider an introvert, then this is a tough one, but it's also vital. So people are, I'm sure some of you know or heard this before, like people are social creatures. We are hardwired biologically to act in a pact mentality. So lack of human interaction can often exacerbate pre-existing depression, if in some cases, a dormant depression, if you will. So lack of human interaction can sometimes bring that up to the surface. So you need stimuli from people in your environment. A lot of anxieties manifest themselves when we are alone with our thoughts, and if you don't spend enough time with, if you don't spend some time with people to provide those stimuli, you can sort of get lost in your own head, get lost in your own thoughts. Sink into your anxieties if you have those, imposter syndrome, existential dread, and the unfortunately familiar feeling of isolation that a lot of us get. So you need the distraction, like bottom line. You need distraction that spending time around other people provides, which worked wonders for me while I was visiting Israel, like to be with friends and family, and spending time with my network back home. Now, this is a little controversial, but I think it's worth bringing up anyway. Programming has a dubious reputation for being the preferred vocation for people who suffer from social anxiety or demonstrate outright antisocial behavior. It might be seen as a negative stereotype. Most of the time it is, depends on context, but there is, I think, some truth to it in some cases. Though often exaggerated in your in TV shows or whatever. People who experience social anxieties can find escape from the often overwhelming experience of social interaction in programming, which often doesn't necessitate constant human exchange. Now, this can be comforting to some in the development community, people who are more prone to feeling of not wanting to be around people. Also, I mean, I get the attraction, but it also can create a vicious cycle of reclusiveness and diminishing life skills that can only be attainable by interaction with one's peers. And I know of some cases where like people completely shut themselves off from the world, and when they went back out, I mean, they didn't know how to handle people, and it can happen. Get a hobby. Find an activity that will keep you busy doing something meaningful and fulfilling, but will also allow you to give your brain a rest. I think the best hobbies are things that you do with your hands. Some ideas for hobbies you can pick up are ones such as woodworking, tending to your bonsai tree, oil painting, picking up the oboe, or the clarinet, or the recorder, whatever it is that you stopped playing in elementary school. Taxidermy. Or you can, alternatively, if you're not good with your hands, you can educate yourself on the mating rituals of your favorite exotic animal or something. Miming, why not? Yeah. Next up, I think this is the last one. Meditate. Now, I came into this with preconceptions about meditating. A little suspicious at first. It didn't seem like it was my thing, and any time it came up. But I found it to be quite refreshing and rejuvenating. It actually helps me with my ADHD. Every time I find myself like pacing back and forth, like my brain going 100 miles a minute, just not really knowing why I went into that room or why I'm standing up or why my mind is all over the place. So what helps me is just tell myself, get your shit together, find a nice corner. It's better if you do it in a quiet environment. You don't have to, obviously, because it's like when you're sort of it's a time of introspection when you're supposed to like block everything out. But it helps to have a quiet environment. Just find a quiet corner in your apartment or the house. Set your phone to like mute, not vibrate. Just actually mute so you don't get distracted. Sit in your favorite position, be comfortable, like get into the Om position. Most important thing is just to like let yourself completely go, like relax everything in your body, your facial muscles, like your forehead, your lips, and sometimes your lips clench up. So it's important to like really let yourself go and completely drain yourself of any kind of negative energy. I find that it sort of it calibrates you, so to speak. Make sure you breathe from your nose, long breaths. This is when nothing is at work but focusing on breathing. It can be very relaxing and soothing, and I find that it is. Or if it's not your thing, you can also do yoga. I don't knock yoga. I've never tried it, but I'm sure that I'm sure a lot of people like it. Those who do it, they like it for the same reasons. I'm not ruling out ever trying it, but I'm fine with meditation. Yeah, most important thing, talk it over. Find yourself a nice, it sounds a little harsh, but get therapy. Get therapy, or alternatively, if you don't feel like spending $100 an hour, you can just grab the closest best friend. Talk it over. No shame in talking about your feelings. Although many of the macho types will disagree, but I'm not the macho type, so I'm not afraid of saying that it's good to talk about your feelings, especially in this situation. Final thoughts. So I'm going to be reading from a script here just to make sure that I didn't leave anything out, because this is what I'll be leaving you with. So, and I lost my notes. Yeah. Found it. Okay. Life is short, random, and chaotic. And it's up to each of us to leave our mark on our community and people close to us. In this increasingly faster-paced, technologically oriented world we're currently living in which, we in the development community are in a unique position to make whatever aspect of a person's personal life or job a little easier. I hope that's why most of you got into the business. So you get to make one person's life easier, or for that matter, a multitude of people whose names, whose names you don't know, and vice versa. Yet you may take comfort in knowing that you are the unsung heroes in their lives. That being said, this job can take an emotional toll on you that needs to be addressed more often. When you get on a plane, the first thing they tell you is that in case of emergency, always ensure your own safety first before looking after others. So you're in the business of making an impact on the world, but your mental well-being is first and foremost. So if you don't take care of yourself first, you'll find that your burden affects your job performance, your relationships with your colleagues, family, friends, and you may very well find yourself coming apart at the seams if you don't take preventative measures to ensure your mental well-being. On a personal note, I know of excuse me. I know of a person who was working as a senior developer for 25 years in a enterprise level, like really high tech shit. Making a six figure salary, and at one point a few years ago, he just suffered a nervous breakdown, and that left him incapacitated for 6 months before he was able to go back to work. So that should tell you something. I mean, money's great, but your mental health is worth a whole lot more. On a different, another thing that I wanted to bring up, like a documentary that I saw recently told a cautionary tale of one successful senior developer who collapsed under the stress and ended up living out of his car. These things happen, unfortunately. And a friend of mine from back home is currently, I'll be blunt about it, they're destitute after experiencing a similar breakdown. So I'll just reiterate, your mental health is more important than your job. It sounds a little harsh, but it is. You have to take care of yourself, folks. I mean, it's there's no other way to put it. You can follow my tips. You can come up with your own. Maybe some of you will find more creative ways to, step back and enjoy the simpler things in life, like the simpler things, but also the most important things: friends, family, community. Yeah. So that's all I have for you. Thank you, and be well.
Let's give it up for Ben.